Alright, so the next thing that I'm doing is I'm getting in there with a toothbrush and cleaning out the idle air passage ports. And the reason I do it, like, you can see the amount of blackness that's on the little flange there.
Exactly.
So basically what happens is exhaust gas gets in there and it condenses, and the carbon actually comes out of suspension in the gas and just basically deposits. It's kind of like smoking, how the soot kind of gets into your lungs. You know, obviously I don't condone smoking, but yeah, just using a regular old hard bristle toothbrush and a can of brake cleaner should loosen all that crap up. But once again, this isn't the main brunt of the problem. I'm just kind of housekeeping in here. The problem is that the idle air control motor actually gets stuck with all those little carbon deposits in there and causes a rough, erratic idle. But I'll move on to that next. I'm just, once again, kind of cleaning house here.
I don't want to blast the throttle body too much because I'm not going to remove the TPS. You can see here, if you look, here's the EGR, and then there's two ports down here. These are what get blocked. Is one of the problems. The other problem is that DPFE sensor. And the other problem is me having to reach clear over this camera to do my work.
So what I'm spraying in right now is actually, so those two ports that I'm cleaning are actually the EGR ports. They go through where the valve sits, all the way across, and then they take a right turn and come to those, and that little right turn there is what gets blocked off. Now I'm actually using some chemical warfare against these, but really you can use the brake cleaner to try and free it all up, but really you kind of need to use a screwdriver and kind of pick away at it after it's all been loosened up. So now what I'm doing is I'm using the toothbrush to kind of just clean around the throttle body here. This can cause, if that gets all blocked up with carbon, that'll cause a really fast idle because the throttle body cannot close properly. In some cases it could also cause a sticky throttle. In some extreme cases where I've seen, it has actually been carboned up so bad that the throttle is actually sticking every time you let your foot off the gas. You really had to push it hard to crack it back open again. Now just kind of be careful here. Try not to blast the throttle position sensor too much. You don't want to get brake cleaner and stuff down in there. You're really going to have a problem. Oh, sorry, I bumped you guys there. So yeah, and be careful that nobody lights a match around you, because this is real messy and you'll go up in flames if there's any form of spark. So yeah, just be careful in that regard. Okay, so now what you see I'm doing is I'm cleaning out the IAC motor. What I'm doing is I'm trying to keep it so that the motor is fairly straight up and down. Not like that, like that. So that none of the brake cleaner gets into the motor, because the same thing will happen is the brake cleaner will destroy the varnish on the windings of the motor. And then all of a sudden your motor will short out and won't work properly. So that is a stepper motor, so it knows how far it's turned. The computer can tell it how far to turn, but it doesn't know how far it's turned because there's no positional feedback. You can just see the crap coming out of there. So basically, yeah, what I'm doing is I'm working at it with a toothbrush again. And I've moved back onto the throttle body for some strange reason. I'm just basically doing some housekeeping on the outside, make sure it looks all nice and clean.
Pretty much.
The only trouble is it's the only time that Luango can't get it in.
It's Gary Bettman that's the problem. Like, they're hoping that a 50-50 deal would work. Come on, man. Why don't a team give 50% of their profits to the league? Or whatever the... Any deal that they're making is just stupid.
Now, while you're cleaning this thing out, you may want to use an air compressor to blow all the solvent out of there. I kind of left it for a little bit and kind of went to grab a bite to eat and let everything air dry. But if you really want to be particular about it, so what I did the first time is I actually used an air compressor to blow out all the carbon and crap in the passage, which actually worked, and it solved the P0401 problem. But yeah, basically as you can see I'm doing is I'm spraying brake cleaner in there, letting it sit, scrubbing. You can't really get too far down in there because the pintle of the motor is right between the two holes, so you can't really get in there too well. But basically you let it sit in there for a minute, and then you dump it out, but try not to tilt the motor back so you get crud in the motors. You can see the brake cleaner starting to come out clear now. That's a good thing. Starting to get all the crud out of there. The crud buildup basically causes the motor to lock itself up and won't turn properly. It's actually a lot more common on the older GMs, the 3.1 and the 3.3, or the 3.4, whatever those, the 60-degree V6 motors and that kind of thing. The pintles would all get gunked up and it wouldn't move properly. So yeah, basically I'm just doing some housekeeping here and there. But make sure that you clean that IAC motor out well, or else you're going to have a stumbly and erratic idle.
No, I was at Christina Lake at the time. I thought it was like 3 or 4 years ago. The National Association of Marlon Brando lookalikes. Mr. Garrison, I'm at the wrong NAMBLA. That was so funny. I think Cartman.
Alright, now what you see me doing is I'm cleaning that little plenum. You know, I'm not going too hog wild because I don't want to get a bunch of crap in the intake. Another thing you could do is stuff a rag in there. And make sure your gasket's facing the right way. I mean, this one's kind of tricky because it's kind of oblong, weird looking thing. There we go. It's a metal gasket. The biggest pain is getting the thing in there, around everything, and having the gasket line up. Now, as you put it in there, there's a big kind of fitting at the back that you have to plug the PCV hose into, which is that one right there. Come on. There we go. It's a little bit tricky, especially because the truck is kind of older and the hoses are kind of getting crusty.
Yeah, there's a one t-shirt store by another one. It's got some pretty good novel t-shirts.
There's something else. There's 3 good posters at Spencer's. They all have the rules of the man cave, and they're all slightly different. They're all really good, though.
In their own way.
So now the next step, we're going to start putting our 4 8mm head bolts back in. One at either corner, and there, I believe the one on the passenger side rear is the one that's the furthest back and kind of the biggest pain to get to, but they're all fairly easy to access, as long as you have the know-how to get at them. So there's one of them right there. I won't bore you guys by talking too much.
The first step is acceptance.
Shit. No, the first step is denial, then acceptance, then anger, no, then sadness.
Remember, you have to cross the denial.
Cleopatra, Queen of Denial, I get it.
Queen of Denial, Miss Morrison.
Pam Tillis, Cleopatra, Queen of Denial.
Yep.
That's an old one.
Well, Pam Tillis, she hasn't been on the radio since the early 90s.
Oh, I thought it was longer than that.
No, she was Mel Tillis' daughter, so she started in the early 80s.
I wonder if it's worth changing that fuel pressure regulator diaphragm. It would be easy to get it right now. Well, the thing is, because of the ethanol fuels, the ethanol tends to chew through it, but until you notice bad gas mileage, kind of rough running.
Wait, it's a V8.
I don't need to bore you guys to death by watching me put all the bolts in, but the next step, we're going to have to put the throttle body on. Now there's 4 bolts at either corner. There we go. Make sure that you have the gasket in between there, or it's really not going to run too great. And again, I'm not going to bore you with putting all the bolts in either.
How old are you? I'm going to be 16 next month. And there's a gift card in it for you if you keep your mouth shut. It's not like Hartley's truck where there's a good spot to put your foot.
Crown Victoria.
That was awesome. Or remember when I had to...
Or even Grandma's truck with the 460.
Remember how I had to change the vacuum line on the Dodge, just like splayed out on the hood or on the engine. That's the nice thing about the Dodge's motors. The manifold's really flat on that thing. Like this motor's mounted so low, right? Like my valve covers are up like here. Cheese hated ship movie. Tom Brady. Hey Brady, what color do you want to be buried in? Go to hell, let off. Jalen was garage.
Okay, so now we're going to put back on the idle air control motor, so don't forget about the gasket. And then that guy just sits on top of that with the plug for the motor facing forward.
Same old laugh.
And then the two bolts that go into the top to hold it in.
Same old song and dance.
That was from EGR Hero 3, which I still have. Kicking around somewhere.
And my Guitar Hero guitar's broken.
Oh no!
So we got
tell me about that.
I got the Rock Band one. Guitar one keeps shutting off on me and restarting itself by itself. It's like possessed.
One more gas.
And you know what I said? Stairway denied.
Stairway denied. Hey Waylon, did you pay the phone bill?
Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm putting the evap hose back on. But I believe I had to fix this later because I forgot to put the zip tie through it. I can't put the brake booster line on just yet, but I'm just going to route it into place.
Young man.
Now the next step, we're going to hook up the throttle spring, which I'm doing right now. And of course the two throttle cables. That's the cruise control that I'm doing right now. And it should just click into place. And then the throttle cable. You have to open the throttle up again and slip the end in order for it to sit in there properly.
Throttle's back in.
Woohoo! From the Brothers in Arms album by Dire Straits. Do the watch.
Okay, so now I'm plugging in the throttle position sensor and the idle air control motor.
Ms. Lover Boy.
We're going back to this week in 1985.
And now I'm plugging in the vacuum line on the passenger side. Okay, so now what we're doing is we are putting in the EGR valve. Now the tricky part about this is trying to fish the valve in so that the tube lines up with the hole on the side of the valve, and having the gasket properly in place as well. So that's going to bolt onto the driver's side of the throttle spacer. And then we put the gasket in behind it and feed the two bolts in.
Sir Tom Jones.
Sir Elton John.
Sir Paul McCartney. And
Sir Roger Moore.
Sir Patrick Stewart.
Sir Pierce Brosnan.
No, I don't think he's...
Yeah, I think going with all James Bonds have been. Sean Connery.
Yeah,
Roger
but
Moore,
Pierce is Irish, though. Actually, so is Sean Connery.
So these two bolts are 10 millimeter, unlike the other ones that are all 8. Now I like to use a deep socket for this because the one at the back, the one that holds the back bolt on, is actually more of a stud, and you can't get just a standard length socket over because that's the one that attaches the bracket to the engine that attaches the brake booster line to the manifold. So once again, don't go too hardcore on these. I like to use a little bit of anti-seize actually on these, especially because the EGR goes through a lot of heat cycles. It's good to not strip out that aluminum.
No. I know this song.
I think it's from a Disney movie. I'm trying to think which one.
You know what? You're right. No, you just can't put a name to it. No.
Oh, no, it's not. I was thinking of a different song.
Sandlot? But also,
Alright, so now the EGR is bolted up.
Two farms.
And put the vacuum line back on the top.
Going by both.
but keep in mind as well that
Now what I'm doing is I'm starting to screw in the little
product, right? It's not the
nut that holds the big nut that holds or it's basically a flare nut that holds the exhaust tubing that connects the manifold to the EGR valve.
Their wiper blades blow.
That thing's a bit of a pain to get in.
So bad.
That's what you need your 1 1/16 wrench for. Now I realize that I had to put the wire tie that holds the amplifier wiring and the wiring for the Dixie horn that's also installed. Yes, it's got a Dixie horn on it. I'm going to take that and I'm going to feed that through there, so keep that out of the exhaust. So you don't want that welding itself to the exhaust. That would be really, really bad.
Also a terrible movie
Alright, so now what I'm doing is I'm using my 1 1/16 wrench
so basic.
to install the nut that holds the flare nut that holds the exhaust tube. You can see in the picture that connects the manifold to the EGR valve. This is a bit of a pain, and you can't put the brake booster line in yet. And frankly, you know what? Hindsight's 2020. I really shouldn't have put the evap line in either. Kind of gives you a little bit more room to move with the wrench, but definitely the brake booster line I did have to take off again after installing it because unfortunately it was just in the way. So don't install that, and as you can see I'm just bumping just about everything. That wrench is so long.
Still think it's funny, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
You guys are all in trouble, eh?
Okay, except for everybody in the third row. Third seat in every row. You've been bad.
You need a reason.
We'll have a beer and talk.
You need a reason.
No, you don't. My arrangements will never have a reason. Okay, this morning instead of starting with the national anthem, we're gonna do sing in unison.
Alright, so the next thing I'm doing is I'm installing the hose there, the vacuum hose that connects the brake booster to the back of the manifold. And as you feed that line in there, you got to make sure that you get the bracket over top of the stud that on the EGR valve there, the EGR valve bolt, and then try to stick the hose on the little fitting at the back there.
That was tough.
Yeah. Hey Whiplash, how's it going?
Where the hell did
I'm sorry I puked on your sweater, pal.
What was that?
You shouldn't have drank all that chocolate milk. Hey, this chocolate milk's 4 months old. That was so nasty.
What was that again?
Remember in the movie?
Okay, so now that we got the brake booster line in and the bracket sitting on the stud, now we got to put the single 10mm nut that goes on that stud and bolt it up. Now, once again, don't go too hardcore on this. I mean, all it's doing is just holding a bracket on. There's no sense in killing it.
I haven't.
So do I.
I've never watched the DVD, to be honest.
It's awesome. I should watch it.
Shit, no way.
Maybe I'll watch it tomorrow.
This sounds kind of like something from the Police. It kind of has that kind of style of music, but I don't think it is. It's definitely not. Oh, I almost dropped my ratchet down there now. Oh, that's another great game series, Ratchet and Clank.
Alright, so now what I'm doing is I'm installing the intake tube. So I'm doing up the clamp that does up the coupling for the throttle body to intake tube.
I don't know, I didn't install mine, so mine came on the truck. It saved me some money. It's almost time to use spark plugs again for me. And he cuddled me. Oh, maybe.
Alright, so the next hose clamp we're going to do is the lower union coupling. This one holds the coupling to the intake tube. Now, unfortunately, this kit apparently didn't come with the hose clamp to hold the tube to the bracket. I didn't install it, my friend did, so he must have missed that, unfortunately. So I think I just used a zip tie, a big zip tie to hold the whole thing together, but the proper fix, we're going to have to get the correct hose clamp for it eventually.
Moonwalker. That was an awesome Sega game. See, Sega had the best games.
That's the best game.
But
Yes.
Okay, so the next fitting we're going to do up, or the next hose clamp, is the one that holds the lower coupling onto the pod filter. Now also don't forget to plug in your IAT sensor, which is at the back of the intake tube, and the mass airflow sensor, which is kind of in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. That's very important. I must have cut the part out where I plugged that in, so just don't forget about it. That's the important thing. And now after that, we're going to put in the tube that connects the idle air control motor to the intake tube. So next we got to do up the two hose clamps that connect that hose, the idle control hose, up to the air intake tube. If you leave these loose, then you're going to be getting a vacuum leak, and because this is a mass airflow controlled motor, the motor's going to run like crap because it's getting what they call false air. So it's getting in unregistered air that isn't measured by the mass airflow sensor. So very important to make sure all the coupling fittings are tight. And now we're going to put the black plastic piece that says 4.6 liter Ford on it. Now remember that there's 2 bolts on the right hand side, at least the way you're looking on the right hand side, of the driver's side of the vehicle. And there's 1 on the left hand side. So make sure you bolt all of those up.
Be very, very quiet.
I'm hunting pussy.
What?
You went rabbit on pussy.
Once again, we are a G-rated channel.
They said PG.
Well, I'm changing it.
That's not pornographic.
It is for CG, Car General Audience, so CGA, or Certified General Accountant. It's the best thing I could do in games, the game that, you know, truths in one lie. That's the one that gets everybody. Dad's is General Accountant. No, none of those are lies. It's like, yes, one of those is a lie. Just which one? I think Mr. Waite's adopted. I found that out when we did that in English class.
What's that?
Mr. Waite's adopted.
I want to go screwed up. This is.
Alright. That should do it. Moment of truth. Hey! Didn't forget the throttle linkages this time.
I only did that once.
There we go. I think we did it. Don't you do this to me.
Check any light come on?
No. Just started to kind of rev back up. I think that's a fix.
Remember, now you can follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/6speeddakota. And you can also follow me on Twitter at 6speeddakota. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments section below. Ask me on Facebook. I really enjoy answering those questions. And yeah, please rate, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.